This one nutrient can lower your cortisol by up to 40% in just 2 months. This nutrient gets used up a ton during times of stress because your adrenal glands need it for all different sorts of functions. And while you're probably getting some of it in your diet, you might be only getting a fraction of what you need, especially if you're under tons of chronic stress and you have very high cortisol. In fact, what they found in this study is that people that are under severe stress needed about 20 to 30 times the normal amount of this nutrient that's in the diet typically. These people came in with all different types of stress symptoms. They had insomnia, anxiety, depression, they were gaining weight, and unfortunately so many people nowadays struggle with high cortisol and with high levels of stress. So to be able to have one tool in your toolkit in order to lower it by 40% is very powerful. And that nutrient that I'm talking about is vitamin C. Now, there was a study done in 2023 investigating the impacts of vitamin C on people's cortisol who are under chronic stress. Now, the importance of vitamin C to the stress response has been known for decades at this point. In fact, most other animals actually synthesize their own vitamin C. We're one of the few animals that needs to acquire vitamin C from the diet. Vitamin C is actually stored in your adrenal glands, which are the glands that output your stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And that should give you an idea of how important it is for preventing excessive stress. And the government recommends that we get around 70 to 80 milligrams of vitamin C per day. But for many of us, this is going to be woefully inadequate because we're under tons of stress, tons of oxidative stress, and tons of inflammation. And during all of these circumstances, your body needs more vitamin C in order to recover. In fact, decades ago, scientists estimated that we needed around 2 grams of vitamin C per day. Yet a good chunk of the population isn't even hitting today's standard of 70 milligrams a day. And in this experiment, they gave people 1 gram of vitamin C or ascorbic acid, which is a pretty good amount. Now, there were 3 different groups. The first group of people had high cortisol and normal DHES. The second group of people had high cortisol and high DHES, and the third group had normal cortisol but high DHES. And then within these groups, people either got the 1 gram of vitamin C or the placebo. And DHES is a sulfated form of a steroid or a hormone called DHEA. And DHEA is essentially the complete opposite of cortisol. It opposes it at every level. And measuring the ratio of cortisol to DHES is a good predictor of mortality and of stress levels. But if you're under lots of stress, the body will actually start to produce more DHES in order to help cope with that stress. So in a weird kind of way, DHES can actually be elevated under times of stress. And in the 2 groups of people with very high cortisol at baseline, the gram of vitamin C per day lowered their cortisol by around 40%. And this is a massive impact. This takes people from being well out of the normal range of cortisol to smack dab right in the middle where you want to be in the range of cortisol, which again is a huge deal because high levels of cortisol are behind so many different health problems, from suppressed immunity to weight gain to muscle atrophy, cognitive decline, you name it, cortisol is likely at least involved. And that's exactly why we started Prism, which we use to help people with all different types of health issues regain their health with a personalized and in-depth approach. We have multiple different practitioners. We've worked with around 500 different clients, and we've seen great success with the clients that we do have. So if you want any personalized help with anything pertaining to your health, come to us, book a free call with Prism here. And in the second group of people who got vitamin C who also had high DHES, their DHES also normalized along with their cortisol levels, pretty much indicating that their body's stress response was back to normal. And finally, the last group also saw a decrease in DHES by around 40%. Now, it's important to note that higher DHES is often protective, but because these people are under high levels of stress and their DHES got lowered, that tells us that abundance of DHES is no longer needed because the stress was resolved. And the most important part of all of this is that vitamin C lowers cortisol in a demand-driven way. And in this study, that means that the higher the level of cortisol was at baseline, the more vitamin C was able to lower it. So it doesn't act like a drug. It doesn't just lower it indiscriminately. So if you already have low cortisol, vitamin C is not going to lower it further. In fact, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to bring it back to baseline. Now, how exactly is vitamin C able to do this? And what can it tell us about other ways that can help us manage our stress and our cortisol? When your body produces cortisol, it starts in your brain in the hypothalamus. It produces a compound called CRH. CRH travels to your pituitary gland to create something called ACTH, and then ACTH travels to your adrenal glands to stimulate the production of cortisol. And inflammation and oxidative stress within the hypothalamus can kickstart this entire cascade. And vitamin C is one of our body's primary antioxidants, so it quenches free radicals and it stops the damage of cells due to things like lipid peroxidation. As I mentioned before, vitamin C is stored in the adrenal glands and it's actually released during times of stress. And with enough vitamin C, the adrenals are able to better regulate how much cortisol they put out. And it seems to do this on an enzymatic level. So when cortisol is being produced in the adrenal glands from cholesterol, there's a ton of different enzymatic steps along the way. And vitamin C seems to have the ability to modify those steps in a manner that controls the output of cortisol. Now, when you're in an actual stressful situation, you want your stress hormones to be output quickly, and then you want them to return to baseline quickly. You don't want the stress cascade to go on forever. That's where you run into health problems. And because vitamin C is able to help promote the production of some of the stress hormones, that's able to sensitize this entire feedback loop and make it so that your body has a robust stress response and then things come back to normal. Now, vitamin C is well known to be in fruits and in juices, things like kiwis, bell peppers, oranges, orange juice. These are all excellent sources of vitamin C, though it's going to be hard to get a gram of vitamin C from just eating these foods. So if you do want to supplement, I'll link my preferred brand here of ascorbic acid. You can also do camu powder. You can do acerola cherry powder. These are very concentrated fruit powders that are concentrated in vitamin C. And vitamin C is generally very safe. The only things that you would want to look out for is if you take too much, you can have loose bowel movements. And if you're predisposed to kidney stones, vitamin C can promote the production of oxalates, which help form kidney stones. However, there are a number of older studies giving massive amounts of vitamin C. We're talking about 10 plus grams a day. And they didn't really note much issues with the kidneys. However, if you are vulnerable to that, it is something to be aware of. And if you're not sure what your cortisol levels are, your DHES levels, or your vitamin C status, you can get lab testing without a doctor through Revelation Diagnostics. All you got to do is go to the website, search your labs, add it to cart, and then you can go to the lab nearest you. Quick, easy, and simple, and you can use code ANALYZE for 10% off at checkout. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.